Good afternoon. I'm here, Terry Danaher with PortsmouthCityWatch.org. We are here today to talk with another candidate for the Commonwealth Attorney's office here in Portsmouth, Virginia. I would like to mention that the man behind the camera is Mark Aduldi-Gutrovsky, who started this organization and whose idea it is to get as much information out to citizens of Portsmouth as possible to make sure that we have information to make our decisions appropriately. Thank you.
My name is Mike Rosenberg. I'm a candidate for the office of the Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Portsmouth. The election to fill the remainder of Judge Mobley's term takes place on Tuesday, February 10th, 2015.
I'm Linda Ridenauer. I'm a citizen of Portsmouth, teacher and former school board member. And I'll start with the first questions we're going to ask. When and where did you get your law degree? As just part one, if you want to include in that when you took the exam and,
Sure.
and those kinds of things.
I graduated from the University of Richmond T.C. Williams School of Law in May of 1986. I took the bar exam, which was given in July of that year, and passed it. And I've been practicing law in this city since November 1st of 1986.
You're originally, I noticed, I was looking at the website for your firm, and I noticed that you're from Pennsylvania?
That's correct. I was
Yeah.
born and raised in Philadelphia.
Yeah. What made you leave Pennsylvania and come to Virginia?
My undergraduate career was not distinguished. I wanted to go to law school. I was not able to get into any law schools. At that time, the economy was completely in the tank up north, and I decided that I was either going to have to go north, south, or west, and I figured the south was growing more and it wasn't as cold.
Yes.
That is the logic behind a lot of my choices.
Yes, that makes total sense to me because we moved south for the same reason as far as the cold goes. How did you adapt? I mean, did you find Virginia a great place to be? Or?
I like it here. I was married for many years. My wife is local. One thing that I really like about the Tidewater area compared to Richmond, Richmond is very parochial. Philadelphia is, or at least was, the same way. And here, because of the whole military presence, if you're not from here 6, 8 generations back, people don't look at you like you have two heads, because they know someone that came here via the military, via the GE plant closing in Syracuse, etc. So I find it to be a more welcoming area to people that don't hail from it than some other places, including the place where I'm from.
Mm-hmm. So have you lived in the Hampton Roads area? Have you lived in Portsmouth, or where have you lived?
I lived in Portsmouth when I first came down here. Then I got married in '89. We lived in Norfolk for a number of years. My family and I moved to Chesapeake in 2008. I separated from my wife in June of 13. I've lived in Portsmouth continuously since then. I currently live in the Cavalier Forest section of Churchland.
So it's not a very long commute to work.
Nope. Well, I fought tunnels for a long time, and I'm very eager never to repeat that again.
Right, as most of us are, especially with the tolls now.
Well, in all these years you've been practicing law, what are some of the major kinds of cases that you've been involved in?
Most of my practice is state criminal defense. I've probably tried over 150 jury trials. I've tried 2 cases where the Commonwealth actually went to trial and sought the death penalty, and they were unsuccessful in getting them. Probably about 15 cases in which a person was charged with murder. Basically, you name it, and that's in addition to misdemeanor cases, traffic cases, things of that nature. I've also kind of gotten away from domestic relations work. I don't really care for it, but I still serve as a guardian ad litem for children in juvenile courts, and maybe about a quarter of my practice is civil trial work, generally representing persons who were injured in accidents, in claims against persons represented by insurance companies.
You mentioned the death penalty just now, which is one of the topics that has come up. Virginia has still the death penalty, as many states do. How do you feel about it from the prosecutor side?
I've been very clear since I set up my Facebook page that if I become the Commonwealth Attorney of the City of Portsmouth, if the facts and the law justify it, I will seek the death penalty. I have no personal opposition to the death penalty. I have a large opposition to it for my clients, but it's something that has to be really looked at very, very carefully, but I don't believe I would hesitate in seeking it if, unfortunately, a situation came up where it was warranted.
How important is our local Commonwealth Attorney in the state level?
Probably not that important. I guess they would be important more like from a lobbying standpoint, but it's a local office. It's a local constitutional office. The major task for the Commonwealth Attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of this city. As such, he or she is tasked with the investigation, presentation, and trial of criminal cases, and there's certain civil responsibilities that the Commonwealth Attorney has, such as forfeitures, mental hearing appeals, and a few other things. But as far as a statewide reach, not unless the Commonwealth Attorney has some sort of ambition to be in the, like the president of the Commonwealth Attorneys Association. I think it's...
Is there a relationship that you, not all the time, but sometimes you have to keep in touch with what's going in the state system to work with
Certainly,
local?
and also especially in an area like Tidewater, because where we have so many localities and people commit crimes all throughout the areas. You may have somebody that has charges in Suffolk, has charges in Chesapeake, etc., and every place does things differently. And I've basically given up on practicing Virginia Beach, but the other cities and counties that are contiguous to Portsmouth, I practice regularly there. I'm familiar with the prosecutors, the police, the authorities, and how they do things there. And I think that that is definitely of assistance to a person, because I could give you 100 examples, but you know, there's the Cowboy way, the Portsmouth way, the Suffolk way, et cetera, et cetera.
How do you, I know that you've been appointed a special prosecutor on occasion, and how did that come about? Can you?
Sure, there were most of the special prosecutor appointments, and the law has been changed about 6 or 7 years ago. It was done much less. There were a number of cases back, I think it was in the mid-90s, where there was a huge conflict of interest, and a whole bunch of cases had to be prosecuted by a special prosecutor. In addition to having defended all these murder cases, I was appointed by a judge of the Portsmouth Circuit Court to prosecute a murder case maybe half a dozen years ago. The way the law is set up is, if there's a conflict with the local Commonwealth Attorney's office, they have to go first to another Commonwealth Attorney's office and say if they'll take it. And evidently, for whatever reason, nobody wanted to have anything to do with this murder case, and I don't want to name the judge because I don't want it to seem as though he was endorsing my ability, but here I was, and the case was tried, and it was, the verdict frustrated me, but it was very interesting just seeing it from the other side. And I've done this for 28 years, and if you're in any kind of adversarial system, I don't care whether it's sports or what we do, you always think in the back of your head, well, if I were the prosecutor, if I were whoever, what would I do? And this is an opportunity.
Right, is that all, you decided to do this on a whim, or you decided
No, I don't
to do
do
this?
that. No, I'm not a whim kind of person. People know me, know that it takes me a long time to make a decision, which is a good thing, but once I make a decision, I don't change my mind very easily. And I've been doing this for a long time. go on doing it. No heavy lifting. My dad was a mechanic. I used to hit my head in cellars with him because I was tall. But I could go on doing this. I have a good practice. I have a good partner. It's something different. And if you do something long enough, you always think about, gee, wouldn't it be different or recharging or invigorating to not do the same thing over and over again?
Right. Interesting. What do you think you take from your 28 years experience and the times that you've done the special prosecutorial role to bring to this whole office? Because of course it's not just trying cases.
Well, not really that much from the special prosecutor, because there just weren't that many of them. I don't want to mislead anybody about my qualifications, but the best analogy I had was I had an uncle who was a boat captain his whole life, and he could look at a boat and he could just almost have like x-ray vision about whether there was something wrong with the hull. I get sick on boats, so. And I can look at a criminal case and I can see what's wrong with it. Now, you're supposed to do justice. It's not just all about winning. I can't say, gee, officer, this would be a better case if you said that the butt of the gun was sticking out where you can see it. But I can tell what the weaknesses are. Also, I've done a lot of different types of work, legal work in a lot of different places, and I've run a business. With the help of my partner and our staff, I actually have 20 years of business management experience, and running a large office, you never know if you could do it until you do it, but I think that I bring the skill set where hopefully I can.
Okay, thank you.
We had some questions come in from the public that they would like for us to ask. One of them, well, let me go to the one at my heart, I guess. Let me find it so I can read it. How would the CA deal with cases of official misconduct, such as we have heard about in Portsmouth the last year and so? In running, city departments or services, even the Freedom of Information Act, if it's misused or not followed through, how does this position fit into handling all of that?
Well, first of all, what I know about the Freedom of Information Act, I could probably write on a matchbook cover if they still have matchbooks. I will say in general that if there's a violation of the law and it can be proven by competent evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, I would bring charges. Beyond that, I can't say it unless I had more information, but
the public can bring what they think is wrong to you to request a charge, or if they think a charge or something is wrong, can they bring that to you?
certainly.
That's how it works?
Well, they can either contact, depending on what the situation is, they can either make a report to the police, or the local police, or the state police, or they can contact the Commonwealth Attorney's office, and although I don't encourage it, there are ways for citizens to actually appear before a grand jury. I know that's happened in the past. Our grand jury system is a whole lot different than a lot of other states.
Oh, okay.
Could you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. The Virginia grand jury system is different. As a criminal defense lawyer, a lot of times I'll get referred cases from other attorneys, and people will say, like, where are the grand jury minutes? Or we'll get an inmate in the jail who will say, well, where are the grand jury minutes? The regular charging grand jury in Portsmouth meets on the first Thursday of the month. The defendant does not get to present his or her side of the story. It's basically a one-sided presentation. It's not unheard of for a jury to not return what's called a true bill and bring in an indictment, but very rarely does it happen. And that's different than in the federal system or in some other areas in the state. I know they have multi-jurisdictional grand juries where, and I don't know why it's not been done in Tidewater. As a defense attorney, I don't think it was my thing to say, hey, this would be a really good idea. Now, of course, if I change, then I'm looking at it from another way.
Well, that sort of brings up, of course, there have been some questionable grand jury results nationally recently that deal with issues of diversity, and we're dealing with, you're in a very diverse city. You have very different populations here within a small city. And you're gonna have to be dealing with that fact as Commonwealth Attorney. How do you see yourself, in your experience as a defense lawyer? I would make an assumption that you had a fairly diverse clientele. Would you
Sure.
say that would be
Definitely.
the case?
And I assume you're asking about what happened in Missouri or what happened in New York or anything like that.
Mhm.
If we never had a police shooting in the city, that would be wonderful. I've been here 28 years, and thank God no police officers have been killed in the city since I've been here. All I can tell you is that facts are facts, and law is law, and I put a comment up the other night on Facebook, and I apologize for repeating it, but nobody gets a break and nobody gets put behind the 8 ball because of who they are. I'm not going to bring a charge to pacify a certain segment of the community, but nor am I going to sweep anything under the rug to pacify another segment of the community.
Right, thank you.
This was an interesting, I think, one that came in from the public. I hope it wasn't to satisfy where they are, but when evidence comes to light that a person that has been in jail is found innocent of a crime, of the crime, what priority does that get in handling it, or, going right through the whole process?
Under me, it would be the top priority, because there's a saying that everybody in jail is innocent, and, we deal with things like this via humor and, things of that nature, but I go to jails all the time. I've never been locked up, but I could not imagine, probably should have been, but I could not imagine actually being put in prison or jail for 30 seconds for something that I didn't do. So if there is information that a person was convicted, I can't promise you what the result of the investigation is going to be, but that's going on the front burner.
Oh, good to hear.
Yes, that's very good to hear. You mentioned that you're guardian ad litem, which makes me think about the juvenile court system and the juvenile, the organizations that are out there, like Friends of the Juvenile Court, to try to help kids not get put in jail or not ever have to deal with the court system again. The idea is to get them out and on another path. What do you see as the relationship between the Commonwealth Attorney's Office and those kinds of organizations?
I hope it's a cooperative relationship and a corroborative relationship. We are not social workers and as the Commonwealth Attorney. And one thing that I've seen over the years in Portsmouth is that there's a tendency among all government entities to say, I'm going to tell somebody else how to do their job. I will work with the people. It's our ideal that no child is abused. It's our ideal that no child comes before the courts or gets hurt. But the reality is that we've all got a role to play in this, and everything has to be looked at on an individual basis. It's not one size fits all. I mean, we're not making cars, or if you ever did factory work, which I did, everything is different, and I'm not talking about, happy little snowflakes. We have to treat every case differently.
Along the lines of juveniles, what are the guidelines, or are there guidelines that change from, or places the juvenile in an adult situation to be tried?
There are two basic categories. A juvenile has to be 14 years of age or older at the time of the offense to be tried as an adult. The decision whether or not to seek either what's called certification or transfer is based on the Commonwealth Attorney. There are certain violent offenses. If a juvenile is charged with a violent offense, the Commonwealth Attorney can ask for a transfer, and a preliminary hearing is conducted analogous to an adult. If a child or a person under the age of 18 is charged with a nonviolent felony, for example, grand larceny, it is within the discretion of the Commonwealth Attorney to request that the offender be transferred to circuit court as an adult. The juvenile court judge decides whether or not to transfer based on a report from the court services unit, an argument from counsel. Any transfer decision may be appealed by either party. So if, suppose there's a 15-year-old that just won't stop stealing cars, and we have enough, and the Commonwealth files to have him transferred, and the juvenile court judge says he's not amenable to treatment, which is the terms within the statute, goes up to circuit court with leave to commit to secure an indictment, the circuit court judge can say, we're not going to transfer him. And even if a juvenile is sent to circuit court, they can be sentenced as an adult or as a juvenile or in some sort of hybrid situation. I had a 16-year-old that I represented in a rape case in a surrounding jurisdiction a few years ago, and he was transferred to circuit court as an adult. He was sentenced as what's called a serious juvenile offender, which meant he spent about 3 years in a juvenile facility. And then when he completed that sentence, he was placed on a 10-year suspended sentence for the rape conviction.
Well, in moving from juveniles to domestic relations, domestic problems and issues and crimes, one of the areas that is, I understand is very difficult in prosecuting, because victims change their minds and they decide that they don't want to follow through. They may feel threatened, they may feel that the system won't give them justice, and if the other side is let go, then they are going to be in more danger than they were before. How do you see your office handling those kinds of situations where the victim could be re-victimized and you need to deal with that?
It's very difficult because we're not a social work agency, and plus we have the mandatory arrest laws in domestic violence cases, and plus there are exceptions to the warrantless arrest requirement that applies to domestic. When I talk to people, I give them the example, if you punched me in the face, the police would come and they would say, I can't arrest you without a warrant, you have to go secure a warrant. But if you and I were brothers and you punched me in the face, then the police could arrest without a warrant. It's an incredibly complex dynamic. Plus, we add things into the mix of we have to prove these cases beyond a reasonable doubt, who's telling the truth, who's not telling the truth. I don't know a solution to it. I can tell you that if I am elected Commonwealth Attorney, what I am going to do is try and talk with the judges in the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court to see if there's any way that we can change the arraignment schedule, because there's a lot more of a lag time between the time that these cases are charged and actually go to trial. And I'm not saying that we do it within a week or two. We want everybody to have their rights, but if there's a way to expedite it, that may help us successfully prosecute these cases if conviction's warranted.
Good point.
What do you think are your personal qualities that would make you the candidate for being elected?
I've been doing this for a long time. I'm experienced. It's very difficult to tell a person to do something if one hasn't done it already. There's been some issues in this city about indirect appointees or elected officials that maybe aren't entirely qualified for their position. When you look at the amount of experience that I have, I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to be in court every day because I'm running a big office, but I am capable and willing to do heavy lifting, so to speak. I've tried a lot of big cases, and I think that the citizens, especially in this city, have a right to demand that their chief prosecutor regularly try cases in court. And I've already told you about my office management experience, plus my children are older. I have the time. I could not imagine in a million years getting involved in politics while my family was younger.
Well, can you remember or just explain one of your cases that you had that was really scary, and tell us how you handled it from here right on through? I mean, no names, but when you began your process, how did you do everything until it got to court to be prosecuted and settled?
Well, I've tried an awful lot of cases, and I don't want to talk about some that are readily recognized
Oh, no.
because I've had some, but I'll give you an example. The first murder case I ever tried was in 1987. It was a young man who stabbed his father to death. There was no question about it. My client had a history of mental illness. The father was brutal. We had family members that testified to unspeakable things that he did. We defended the case on a claim of self-defense. We did a lot of exploration regarding the prior bad acts that the father did, because in a self-defense case, you could bring in prior bad acts of the victim subject to certain other evidentiary rules. Excuse me. This was a long time ago, but I remember having to learn a lot about forensic toxicology because the dead man had had some very, very high alcohol content. I remember trying it. It was my first murder trial, actually my first acquittal. Only acquittal, but I probably shouldn't tell you that. And I really believed that the young man who's now dead really had no choice. The father was just a bad, bad person.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up to me, what is your favorite part of the job you do now, and what do you think will be what you like most about being Commonwealth Attorney?
I like trying cases. To me, trying cases is fun. To me, trying cases is interesting. Doing office work, it's something that I do, but if I never had to do it, that would be okay with me. And I would really look forward to the idea of being able to try cases without having to do the business type things that I've got to do to run an office. Would very much like not having to chase people down for fees. When you run your own office, you're the last one to get paid. But the main thing is, I like trying cases, and I think I'm pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm. So you would continue with that as a treat for yourself?
No, I don't think it's a treat, because we're dealing with people's lives.
Yeah.
But it's something that I definitely enjoy, and it's changed a lot. Well, I was a public defender for about 3 years here, and I maybe tried 90 jury trials in 3 years. We just don't try as many cases as we used to, because we have sentencing guidelines. We have certain other things that have changed. The bifurcated trial system, where the jury decides guilt or innocence and then decides your sentence, has been around for 20 years. So I'd gone from trying maybe 30 jury trials a year to trying, say, between 3 and a dozen. And I like it. It gets me interested. It gets me motivated.
Mm-hmm.
This is the real deal. This is, to me, what a lawyer does.
Okay. Linda, did you have anything
No, I
else?
think that pretty much covers it. If we want to come to a point where you can make a statement about why you're the best candidate for this, and give that to the citizens that may be listening. So I know you've said it as we've gone
You're
through.
giving a lawyer an opportunity to run his mouth, and that's probably.
He said you don't talk much.
I really think that you ladies have been gracious enough to let me answer your questions. I don't have anything to add to what you gave me to say. If any of you have any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay, well, I look at this as a big job. It's a really big job, and it's one that doesn't have a lot of attention paid to it, really, in the everydayness of life in Portsmouth and elsewhere. I think that, most people don't even think about the fact that a Commonwealth Attorney exists. So it's very important for people to understand that it is a very important job, because what happens with that office has an impact on how people perceive your community and how the community actually exists within the law.
Definitely.
Crime. And one of the things that we have here in Portsmouth that is unfortunate, and you see it in the paper all the time, is this, we have a sort of inferiority complex. And there is a negative out in the rest of the region sometimes about Portsmouth and us being a high crime area, which statistically speaking, I would say that we are not the highest crime area necessarily. What is your take on that? I guess that's...
Well, first of all, with the crime area, I don't know, crime statistics are not always the most trustworthy things. The ones I pay attention to are either homicides, shootings, or auto thefts, because obviously homicides and shootings, someone goes to the hospital. Auto thefts, most of the time someone's going to make a report to an insurance company. I think a lot of our police department, but you can't massage those sort of things down. I think that in Portsmouth, yes, we get a bad rap. Safety is not an issue in most of the areas, and one thing that I've seen throughout the area is perhaps some of our officials maybe don't make the best impression of the city. And if the people of Portsmouth want to say, we're serious about this, we're serious about electing a qualified person, we have a choice. And I'd suggest that when you've got someone with my experience that can do the job, they can't blame anybody but themselves. They can't say city council appointed this person and they were not up to the job, or the school board, or the city manager. This is on them. And of all the constitutional officers, and I mean no disrespect to any of them, especially here because the sheriff is not the primary law enforcement agency like they are in Isle of Wight County or Southampton County, where I've been the last couple of days. I think that of the constitutional officers, there's no question that the Commonwealth Attorney has the biggest effect on the day-to-day quality of life for the citizens.
And something you said, my impression of what citizens think is that maybe even Commonwealth Attorney, that's an elected office, or I don't think they are aware of the importance and the trust that this office and the person who is the Commonwealth Attorney can bring to citizens if they, elect the right person and follow someone who's going to be just and fair in doing that position.
I agree with you, and also, a lot of people, they don't go to court. Nobody wants to go to court.
Right.
I go to court because it's what I do.
Yes.
But typically, the only time you want to go to court is, somebody's going to die and you've got to probate the will, or if you go to jury duty or something like that. So people don't know about it. A lot of times, what's the Commonwealth Attorney? Well, it's like the DA, only we call it, the DA.
Yeah.
Okay? And, we can educate the people about what's involved. It's a big office. I mean, compared to when I came here, they probably have, and I'm not privy to what they've got. They don't give you their internal stuff, nor should they, but they must have 15, 20 lawyers there, and an equivalent amount of support staff. It's a large endeavor, and there's some things that can be done. I want to make it more convenient for the people. I want to make it where I like to keep the office open one night a week, where if a working person or a person goes to school or someone has to take care of a child or someone's not well, they can come out in the evening. We can't help them. There's no night court here, but we can do something like that. We can work 24 hours a day. There's a thing called a Category 1 offender, which means a person has a violent crime on the record. What I'd like to do, if I can come to an agreement with Chief Hargis and the state police, if I am elected, is make it where there's an attorney on call 24/7. If they arrest a Category 1 offender, someone with a Category 1 record, call somebody out. Let's get this from the beginning. Let's try and not get a bond. And I don't want to lock everybody up. Not everybody deserves to be locked up.
Right.
I mean, if you come home from prison and you want to behave yourself, I'm your best friend in the world. I'll just leave you alone.
Okay. Well, really appreciate your coming and talking to us.
Well, thank you so much
It's
for having
been
me.
Terrific.
Thank you for having me. I
Yeah.
kind of a little bit of practice for tomorrow night anyway.
Where we will be. We will see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Okay.
All right, anything you want